Hello YouTube, De-bodgery here. Welcome to EV Components Review. On the bench is my KO Moto Pro controller, which I bought. And behind it is my Fardriver controller, my QS96530, which I also bought. Difference in these two is slightly less than half the price. Yeah. Otherwise, performance-wise, they were pretty similar in real-world testing. You know, the Pro has been dynoed, and it doesn't do better than about 500 or 600 phase amps, and then it overheats. And, well, that's also the upper limits for this Fardriver. So, different power stage layout, different components used there, but kind of similar performance otherwise. Yeah. The name of this video is KO Moto actually Fardriver development? And this isn't the smoking gun, it's just a lot of really interesting coincidences. And so I will have a smoking gun, but yeah, this is just a lot of really damning coincidences at this point in time. And probably the single biggest one, and this is nearly the smoking gun, and on a really high level, I mean, a really, really strong smoking gun, but not actually emphatic proof. And that is that there are videos on Facebook of a gentleman with a Fardriver controller, and he is running it with the KO Moto software. The chances that all the communication protocols, all the stuff in the firmware, how all the data and I/O and all that stuff works, being identical between Fardriver and KO Moto, so that you can do that, is astronomically slim, okay? Yeah, that's just not likely to happen. If anybody has got any experience with software development, you know that this is the case. The reason why you have successful communications between an iPhone and an Android phone is because the protocols used are deliberately identical. That's the only way that works. Otherwise, yeah, software development for two completely independent teams, they're only the same because they deliberately do it that way. So, one of two things, in my opinion, is happening. KO Moto is lying, and they are actually running Fardriver software and firmware, or they stole it from Fardriver. One of those two things is the probable outcome here. And I don't know which it is, but either one, they're lying about it, right? And that's pretty par for the course for KO Moto anyway. All right, so I'm going to talk about a bunch of really significant coincidences here, and that's the best I can do right now without the last thing, or the first thing I'm going to show you. So that is the CPUs. So here is the CPU on here, and that is a GD32F303, so it's a GigaDevices part, but functionally speaking, pinout-wise, performance-wise, it's identical, or super close. I mean, so close that the gap between them is negligible from the STM32F103. Yeah. I don't know this is fact, but I'm pretty darn sure that the firmware on here could be put on there and it would run. Or the firmware on here could be put on here and it would just run. Yeah. That's so functionally identical to be identical. And I already know that this is a clone, okay? Clone of that guy. That's just how that is. So yeah, the fact that one of them's using a GigaDevices part and the other one's using an STM part, that could be simply supply chain. Nothing else. Okay, since we've got this on here, let me just slide this over a skosh. There we go. So here's one of your current loops. Here's the other one. So as you can see, two of them here as well. This loop and these loops, they are exactly the same loops. The hulls inside and inside are the same hulls in here. If there was the only thing that was in common between them, I'd blow that off. But it's not. Yeah. Okay. Let's go over here a little bit. Let me shift this down. There we go. So, there are hundreds of buck chips out there. I have mentioned many of them in my teardowns. Here's the buck chip right here. Here is the main DC to DC converter for battery voltage down to 12 volts. And here is the same thing right here. And there's this buck chip. Both of those are the U3018 buck chip. Both of them. 7805, 7805. Yeah, the same part again. Here is the AMS 1117, 3.3 volt linear regulator, and they used a little itty bitty one right here, 3 volt linear regulator. Both of these are 3.3 volt chips. You know, just having 12 volts, 5 volts, and 3.3 volts isn't really damning of it in itself, because a lot of people do that. That's not really proof of much of anything. Yeah, but there are things that are, still more of them. So right here, you can't see this one because it's hidden back there, and right there, that's the MOSFET gate drivers on the Fardriver board. And here, here, and here are the 3 gate drivers on the KO Pro controller. These are different part numbers, but when you look up their specs and you look up their pinouts, they are identical. So this is just simply supply chain. One manufacturer versus another making literally the same chip. I could unsolder this and put it on here and it would work, okay? That's how identical they are. Do nothing else and they would just run. So right here, you can see that little op amp, and you can see this little op amp. 4, quad op amp packages. 2 different manufacturers, but again, pin for pin, exactly the same. Same specs, everything. Yeah, that's, I mean, okay, fine. They didn't use the exact same part number. That's just supply chain things. But the fact that they use 2 different op amp packages from 2 different sources that have the same specs, oh, come on, really? That's a huge coincidence. Yeah. This right here so far, just looking at those electronics similarities, extreme similarities, already leads me to believe that this is Fardriver development, both hardware-wise and software-wise. And I'm still not done yet. So let me set this aside, because I am done with that part. Okay, so right here is the I/O connector for the KO Pro, F-Spec, Rush, whatever. And here is the Fardriver connector. And this one has got a silicone cover over top of the white connector, but is otherwise exactly the same pin count, same pin spacing, everything. Yeah, if this was all there was just the same connector, I'd blow that off. But we've got an abundance of similarities here, of coincidences that are like way too many. Yeah, way too many. All right, right here is the Bluetooth module. And so this one's soldered in, and this one is on a little connector. Big deal. The Bluetooth chip is the exact same Bluetooth chip. And that is a, it's hard to read that number. An 8752 looks like. Yeah. Yeah, I can probably read this one better. This one's got some smudge on it from the potting or whatever that was on there. Well, actually, there wasn't potting. There was hot glue on it. But, yeah, same Bluetooth chip. They are on a slightly different board because this one, it's a slightly different implementation, but the exact same Bluetooth chip. By the way, I can connect to these things through UART software so that I can see what's inside them. I would be not even slightly surprised if I connected to this one and I started looking at its registers and its configuration, that it's in fact the exact same as that one. Yeah, or the differences are really negligibly small. Anyway, I don't know that as fact, that's just speculation. But yeah, you have way too many coincidences to lead me to believe that this isn't almost exclusively Fardriver development. The power stage on the KO Pro controller and the F-Spec is really horrible, and the power stage on the Fardriver is a lot better, but it's still not awesome. So there is a fair chance that even that was developed by the same engineer. Some, I don't know, high school kid or 12-year-old or something, I don't know. Not a very good one, that's for sure, because this power stage is awful. All right, this is, a side coincidence, but it's another one. So here's your 2 connectors. Yeah, they've got the exact same silicone seal in them. It's the exact same pin count, exact same connectors. All that's different is the wires in them. Yeah, going to where, which isn't really all that surprising. But yeah, it's another coincidence. If that's all it was, then I would say, yeah, whatever. That can happen. That coincidences like this happen. But when you've got so many coincidences happening, yeah, that's, well, that's defying my ability to just say, oh, yeah, it's just coincidence at that point. Uh-huh. Anyway, the last thing I'm going to do, and I've already said this, and not really just explained it really well, but here's your two CPUs. You know, yes, that is a GD32F303 by GigaDevice, and that is an STM32F103 by ST Micro, but they're functionally the same in every way. They both have their 4-pin programming port on them, right there and there. Yeah, extract their firmware up here, extract their firmware up there, do a diff between the two, and that is the DNA on the gun, that's the fingerprint on the shell casing, that's the rifling from the barrel in the corpse. Okay, that's about as damning of evidence as you can get, and after that, KO can deny, lie all they like, but yeah, that one is absolutely, at that point, absolutely irrefutable. So, I'm not saying absolutely for sure that this is Fardriver development, but I'm saying the chances are pretty damn high. Just the software alone makes that really compelling. And then all the hardware similarities, holy cow. Yeah, there's not much chance that this isn't Fardriver development, as much as they might protest otherwise. And that firmware is going to prove it. Absolute dead for sure will prove it.